95, Adelaide's 5AA. This is Richard Pascoe.
Yes, at 1:55 here on 5AA. Remember, give me a call, 8223 0000. Send me a text, 0448 08 1395, or an email on air at 5AA.com.au. Now, a man has stepped into the fore here because we will be talking to Gail from Cosmos Magazine, but even better, we're going to now talk to Steve Davis. Good afternoon, Steve.
Hello, Richard.
How are you today?
Good. Good.
Now, what famous South Australian have you got for us today?
Well, I'm looking at Metal and Stone Jewellers in Strathalbyn, run by a husband and wife team, Maurice and Sonia Lorenz. Really interesting story behind this couple that spans across the country. So strap in. It's a little piece of our history too. So Maurice's dad was a jeweller in his own right. He moved to Australia from Germany back in the late 40s, early 50s, and he worked in the railways for a couple of years as a fireman up around Peterborough. And as you might know, that means shoveling that coal in, the fires going. And just occurred to me, isn't that beautiful poetry? Because when he became a jeweller, he was working around that heat to melt metal, etc. Is it just me? I just see there's something poetic in that little connection.
Yes.
But his dad's name was Manfred Lorenz, and there may be some people who still remember that name. He was one of what they called the Rat Pack of Adelaide jewellers back in the 50s. Because I've got to tell you, as I was getting the background on this, we had quite a scene in Adelaide. We think the fringe is all pretty hip and happening now. We had that suave 50s scene, and Manfred would hang around with people like Frank McCabe, another name well known.
Oh, yes.
In fact, Frank was Maurice's godfather. A little bit of trivia there. So it was quite a swinging scene in the 50s. There were lots of parties, cocktails, glamorous dresses, and the word of mouth in that community was so good that Lorenz's never had to advertise. So that's always a nice place to be when you're in business. But imagine this. We've got Manfred, very successful. Maurice's older brother, Roger, joins the dad as an apprentice jeweller. You'd expect Maurice to follow. So he asks his dad. His dad says no. He says, no, I don't. He didn't want both of his sons being apprentices. But as history tells us, he didn't give up because he has this from memory. He clearly remembers, this is Maurice now, as a 17-year-old, getting down on his knees in the kitchen. His mum's there, and he begs his dad to let him be an apprentice.
Wow, that's good.
And he said, yeah, go ahead. He said, yes. I mean, was there anything you ever begged your parents for, Richard Pascoe?
Begged my mum for let's get out of the house. No, that's terrible. It's a terrible. I had a hard childhood, Steve. So yes.
Okay. Well, look, this is a man who, and I think history's borne this out. His older brother Roger no longer is in jewellery. In fact, he's in Tasmania. He makes deluxe chicken coops. So deluxe, they're called the Taj Mahals of chicken coops. That's his brother. But Maurice is still in the jewellery game. And I'm looking at a clipping now they sent me. It was either from the news or the advertiser. That bit isn't there. 1951, Adelaide Jewel Show is the heading. And apparently the governor, now here's some trivia for you. I know Keith Conlon would know this if he was on.
Right.
Richard Pascoe, who was the South Australian governor in 1951?
You got no idea.
I feel even now. Sir Robert George.
Oh,
and he was
good old Bob. Yeah,
good old Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sir Bob to you, thank
yes.
you. A lot of jewellers were there, and there was a feature story on Manfred Lorenz. Anyway, fast forward 30 years, it's 1981. Maurice gets his apprenticeship, and all is happy. Now, a little insight, I didn't know this. When you're a jeweller, if you think about it, it makes sense. You're living a really solitary life. And apparently it's a thing. They go a bit crazy. They crave company. A little bit like, I don't know, talkback announcers. You deal with it by opening the lines. So anyway, he went out, did some other jobs for a while, gave up the apprenticeship. He was doing some tech stuff. Oh, that rings the bell too, a bit like you.
Anyway,
He came back and finished off his apprenticeship somewhere, but didn't start up a jewellery practice. He went to Coober Pedy. This is the early 2000s now, because his dad had good relationships with miners up there. So Maurice bought his own dugout in the early 2000s.
Right.
And it's at this time that a young Sonia was living over in Wollongong. She was a language teacher. She's got a European background. She has a love affair with everything aesthetically European. In fact, she was in a long-distance love affair with an Italian man. Probably should mention it. But it petered out. And so she went looking online for a new relationship, and that's when they met. So she came over, 3-day visit. They were pretty happy. So she decided, this is the man for me, and she moved to Coober Pedy.
So she came from Wollongong to Coober Pedy.
Yeah. Now, Wollongong...
I was going to say, she must have gone, what the hell am I doing here? Because have you been to Coober Pedy?
No, I'm going later this year.
Okay.
Here's her quote. When she first got there, she just said to Maurice, this place assaults my eyeballs. See, all she could see in her limited...
Big cheerio for in Coober Pedy and listening today. I did, yeah, the place is interesting, so yes.
Well, she grew up around the coast, and she's just the piles of dirt, broken down machinery. For the first 4 months of marriage, she cried every day.
Right.
But there was it does have a happy ending. She became a local teacher, and they had a lovely time there. But by the time of their second kid, they moved to Adelaide, and he started working for Class A jewellers, and then they had a restructure. He became redundant. Now, in many life histories, this could be one of two ways. That's it, hit the skids. But Sonia remembers making a card, congratulations on your redundancy. And it was quite prophetic, because if he hadn't been made redundant, we wouldn't be talking today. That's what pushed him out the nest. And they started their own manufacturing jewellery business. They were based in Adelaide Hills, but then they discovered Strathalbyn, and they just loved it because of its similarities to Coober Pedy.
Oh.
Well, insofar as it's a small community, people know each other, a lot less dust though, but low overheads for business. So they started up in Strath. That's where they've been ever since. And just a few last observations to share from their journey that was interesting. They are, well, particularly Maurice, completely obsessive when it comes to making jewellery. There is such an art
there is.
to making clasps that hold stones for like 100 years plus. Yeah. You know, no cutting of corners. And in fact, Sonia reckons if they are looking at jewellery and there's handmade jewellery versus the factory stuff, they can tell. She said, if you've seen the castle, you'll understand this. She said, there's a vibe. There's a vibe that you get because a bit of that jeweller soul is in that piece of jewellery. But there was another...
And that's why you and I will never make jewellery, Steve.
Yeah, exactly. Great story. A young lady came in one day to Strathalbyn and she said, look, my auntie's given me a ring. She fished around in her handbag. She said, is it worth anything? It was worth $50,000. And the woman almost broke... Yeah, she almost broke down. She said, I can't tell you how important this is. I have recently become homeless. I've been living out of my car, and it just changed her life. She just... So, I mean, this is the stuff where dreams happen, I suppose, this world of jewellery. But one last thing to finish on, a bit of a helpful tip. Apparently our rings aren't like bulletproof. They can break and suffer wear and tear. If anyone listening has a ring that is a raised ring, it's hard. You've got to take that off before you go to bed. Did you know that, Richard?
No,
I had no idea.
No idea.
Yep, because apparently when we toss around in bed and you sort of lay on your hand and it's pushing against the pillows, that's a lot of force on that little bit of metal that's doing its best.
Right.
And over time, it thins out, it can crack, it can stretch. And she said gardening's the same, doing workout. She said bricklaying. She's got ladies who do bricklaying, and she has to tell them all the time, take your rings off. And her word of advice, every 2 years, if you've got rings like that, get them checked. And for plain bands, 5 years. just because it does wear out over time, the wear and tear. So there you go. A little bit of a potted history.
Never knew that. Good heavens.
Yes. So that's Maurice and Sonia Lorenz. Lovely people up there in Strathalbyn, and they make jewellery, they repair jewellery. Yeah, great people.
Which is great. Steve, give a plug for you.
Oh, well, look, I met them, of course, because I do mentoring as part of my marketing job. And so at talkedaboutmarketing.com, there's a big button if you want to do some mentoring too. At the moment, it's subsidised. It's 3 hours, $44. Love to help a small business get some clarity on the marketing realm. And this was an expensive one, knowing Sonia and Maurice, because now my wife is dropping hints about another ring.
Right.
Apparently, we have a 20th wedding anniversary coming up. Apparently, yes, exactly. Oh, that's beautiful. That is an artist at work, Richard Pascoe.
Thank you, Steve. Yes.
All right.
I'm looking forward to, we'll hopefully be able to have you on later in the year after you've been to Cooper Pedy. And I'll talk about some stories off air about Cooper Pedy as well.
Well, I hope I don't end up crying for the next 4 months every day, but I'm pretty sure I won't.
No, you'll be
I know
right.
people up there that I've met through mentoring. I should dig out a Cooper Pediite to try and talk about at some point soon.
Oh, that'd be good. That'd be good.
Yeah.
They'd love me. All right, Steve, you have a good afternoon, okay? And
Thank you very much.
Talk to you next week. Thanks, Steve.
See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
That was Steve Days with another great South Australian story.